Hey everybody, this is Craig Cottle, Director of Nature Reliance School, coming to you today on our continuing series on tree identification. Today we're going to be talking about the eastern white pine. This is one of my favorite trees to talk about because there's a lot of uses for it, as well as these particular white pines that you see here and behind me. I actually planted when they were about that tall, so these are pretty special to me. Glad you joined us. So the eastern white pine, however, is considered to be the most palatable by far, simply because it has almost a sweet taste to it. This tree is very distinctive in that it has circular branches that go out palmately from the trunk of the tree, and typically it grows to about 150 foot tall, depending upon the earth that it's growing in. It has a very straight trunk, and it has gray-green bark on the more younger trees, and when it gets older, the bark will become dark gray or even brown. The eastern white pine leaves grow in bundles of 5 needles each, and they can grow all the way out to 5 inches long. In addition to making a very good tasting tea that is both vitamin A and C rich, the needles can be infused in water with sugar for a very wonderful syrup. Now I can't show you this because we're in the midst of the summertime, but in the very early spring on the ends of these branches you'll have young shoots, which you can see right here, but it's already starting to mature. Sometimes these are called candles. You can harvest these just like you can the pine needles and use them in a salad. My experience has been it's not quite as bitter as you would expect it to be. What you'll find, again, because the eastern white pine, is that it has almost a sugary flavor to it. The other thing that's wonderful about pine trees, and this is all pine trees, but the eastern white pine is the best, is that you can actually eat the bark. And I'm not talking about this outer part of the bark that you see, not this brownish green part. Basically what you want to do is take this portion of the tree off, get to the layer that's directly underneath of that. That's called the cambium layer. Now what you can do is you can eat it as is in a true survival situation. Just eat that because it's got a lot of nutrition in it. However, what you can also do is collect it, scrape it off the bark, or scrape it off the inside bark that you pull off, as well as the portion of the tree that's left. And you can collect that and mush it, and you can fry that up and eat it just like crackers. Basically, you can put it over a grill, it'll fire up. It's going to be pine tasty, but it's also going to have a sweet flavor to it. Now the thing to remember is if I'm going to collect some pine because I want to try this, you can see that these trees have been cut, the branches have been cut lower simply so that my dad can mow underneath here, because these are in a yard, right? But if you want to go out into a forest and you want to collect this, make sure you're not breaking any federal law by going on federal property or anything like that. But what you can do if you have access to some private pine trees is simply take the outer bark off, and what you'll do is not cut all the way around the tree. That's called girdling. So if I take the bark and cut it all the way through, all the way around the tree, what I'm going to do is in essence kill the tree. So I can cut a rectangle in a tree as I'm demonstrating here, and when I do that, what's going to happen is that wound is going to heal and it'll be just fine, and it won't damage the tree for future generations. Eastern white pine trees are basically both male and female species, so when they bear pine cones, they're basically going to bear one of each. If you get to the higher portions of the tree, you'll be able to find the female seed cones, and lower in the tree you'll find the male cones. In essence, what you've got there is the continued ability for that tree to survive, and so that basically takes care of itself. The reason I point that out is because the smaller pine cones that you'll find on the bottom of the tree early in the season are edible. You can pull them off, they'll be small, and you can eat them. And again, we don't have video of smaller pine cones, but you'll find that in the early spring. You want to get them when they're less than a couple inches long, and they'll still be edible. From a pure survival perspective, what you've got here is some really good fire starter too. All your pine trees have a resin in them, and anytime they're damaged, the resin will come out, and that resin is something you can use for fire starting. You can mix it in on a feather stick. You can use it to mix with some ash to create basically a glue process that you can adhere arrowheads to arrows. You can glue portions of your tent. You can plug a hole in a cup. Any number of things that you can do with the sap, the resin that comes out of the pine trees. Another fantastic use for pines, any pine, but eastern white pines work for this well too, is to utilize these for fire starting material. If you can find a branch that's fallen down and the needles are still on it and they're dry, or you can find them on the ground dry, which is difficult to do. You can still utilize these to be an excellent tinder source for fire starting material. If you only have a choice of picking stuff off the ground, then gather them up and lay them on a rock so that they'll dry out, and in due time you'll be able to get some fantastic tinder. So in short, that is the eastern white pine, one of my favorite trees in the whole wide world. One of the things that's an indicative of this species is I don't want you to think that you'll be seeing this tree out here like this in a forest. In essence, what we've got here is a situation where each one of these trees, as they were young and growing, had full sunlight. There was no blocking of sun from other species in the forest. So as you can see behind me, you've got that circular pattern of branches that grow and then you step up. Okay, as you do that, that's going to happen on your pine trees, but where these branches are fuller on the bottom, that's because they're reaching out to get that full sunlight, and you're going to have a larger crown in the forest, whereas you've got a completely full tree right here in this particular yard. Again, these trees, I planted these trees. Matter of fact, there's a couple that are missing. You can look over in one spot over there and see where one's missing. I weed-eated that bad boy down when it was about knee high, so that's why it's not there, and there's another species of tree in its place. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed our look at the eastern white pine. If you have any uses for it, then check it out below. Put those in there, and that way we can help each other. As always, we really appreciate you following us here. We ask that you continue to follow us on Carbon TV, on YouTube, and as always, go to naturalliance.org to find our blog with all the information and all the places that we write and do videos for. With Nature Reliance School, always, come on, join in, let's learn together.